Yeah, that's fair. Great
Lonnie,
point.
Did you pin it?
Great point.
Okay.
Okay, it's not on my screen.
It's pinned on my screen, so we're fine.
Okay.
How do we get these crew necks?
Do you want me to put the mall plug in?
The mall? St. Matthew's Mall?
That's fine, it's fine either way.
Okay.
You want that, Sarah? Can make it fair. Sarah, can make it
I complimented on the way in. I'm like, where'd he get that? It's nice.
All right, is everybody ready? All right, well, Bev, I guess we can just start with some comments from you, and then we can open it up for questions. We have a couple people on Zoom also.
Awesome.
But just, the season's hard to believe, but right around the corner.
Yes.
Just what's your thought process and mindset as you guys are 2 weeks out from starting back up?
Yeah, obviously incredibly excited for the 2025 season to begin. Like you mentioned, it feels like it's flown by. When it first ends, it feels very long. And then very quickly can speed up. So incredibly excited for the start of the season, taking a lot of 2024 and some self-reflection as the head coach and as a staff. In ways that we can be better is incredibly important. I know it's no secret we finished 9th yet again. So the self-reflection process is going to be very important for us coming into this season. And that 1 to 2% that essentially everybody's searching for that gets us over the line has been something that's been on my mind the entire off season. So very excited to come in, very excited to see the players get together as a staff. We've been in communications the entire off season as a staff. Have had meetings with players coming in, and yeah, just very excited for the season to start.
Questions?
Coach, what's been kind of, from your standpoint, the points of emphasis of this offseason?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to speak on behalf of myself. Obviously, my first year as a head coach, I think the most critical and most important piece is to have self-reflection. I'd also say if this was my 8th season, I think the same thing should still be in place. So for me, it's been about specifically building the relationships. I think I've spent a lot of time throughout season trying to better understand the individuals. What are their needs? What are their preferences in communication, right? These types of pieces. So a lot of the self-reflection that I've spent this off season was very simply, I'll give you an example, was having everybody fill out a personality traits quiz, test, however you'd like to label it, and going over that with the players. Who are my players that are a little bit more social? Who are my players that are a little bit more analytical? Who are my players that have high self-reflection? And understanding, I grew up in a household, very simply, treat people the way that you want to be treated. That was our golden rule, right? Mom was always on me for it. And now I'm realizing through this personality opportunity to connect with the players, build relationships from an IDP perspective, etc. Treat people the way that they need to be treated. Everybody is different. And building that relationship with these players is going to be very, very important for me. So in a self-reflection process, I spent a lot of time in the off season about how to do that as a staff, and how to provide that environment for the players, that I believe I could get that 1 to 2% from the individuals, which means collectively we gain more as well.
When you look back at last season, you've had more time to kind of see how that final stretch went. But what jumps out to you is to get over that line, the first couple points of emphasis for you going into this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's no secret that when you look at it, you could go multiple ways. So for me, it's not the search of what specifically it was. For me, it's going across and improving a little bit of everything, just a few percentage. 1 to 2% here, 1 to 2% here. I don't think that there's any capacity to find the exact thing. I don't think there will ever be an exact thing. So I think my job is to enhance all of the different pieces, to identify what those pieces are, narrow those pieces in, but improve all of those areas. And ultimately, I've always said this, we're looking for improvements across the board, and we'll always self-reflect on how we can improve first to provide that for the environment.
Sure. With Ryan out of the picture now too, how does that change your day-to-day in terms of talent evaluation, player recruitment?
Yeah.
Obviously, I know Caitlyn's in an interim role,
Absolutely.
but I'm sure that process looks different.
Absolutely. So obviously very grateful for my time spent with Ryan in the role. I'm always wishing him and his wife the best. And with Caitlyn stepping into the interim GM role, there's been a process in place alongside our data analyst. And there's multiple pieces to that process when you're talking about recruitment, player identification. There's several aspects to it, right? Does the player embody the characteristics, the values that we're looking for? What is this positional profile for this player? And throughout that process, we feel like we've gotten into a very good, some very good steps into ensuring that we can identify these players, and then availability becomes a thing, right? There's so many aspects when you speak recruitment, but we feel like we've done a good job in building our relationships, creating a good process in place for us to have the best ability to enhance our roster.
When you have players like Emma Sears and Savannah DeMello who get called
Yes.
up to the national roster this month, what do they bring back from that experience that can help you kind of get that 1% and 2%?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm incredibly proud of them, incredibly happy for them to be called in. It's also fantastic for them to have this type of confidence leading into preseason as well. And I think for us, it's very important that we continue to support their journey. Obviously, we want what's best for them within our club environment. We want them to continue to stay in their national team, their respective national team environment. So for us, it's going to be once they get in, obviously now it overlaps a little bit with our preseason. So once they get in, getting them into our systems as quick as possible, but also using that confidence that they're building here very early on to benefit them throughout the season. Obviously, both incredibly fantastic players have contributed a lot to this club and this community, and very happy for them.
Coach, how much, I know Tyler kind of hit on it a little bit, but how much do you dwell or think about what could have been last season, like almost making that playoff? Do you think about that at all now, or is it all flushed and we're focused on what's ahead?
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic question. I think I'm human, and no matter what, any role that you're in, you can't help but think about what ifs. I think the biggest piece for me in this role is to not allow the what ifs to take a long period of time. The what ifs are the what ifs. You're going to think, to my point earlier with Tyler, there's so many different things that you could look back and go, what if I did this? What if I had made a sub earlier? There's always going to be the what ifs. Post game, there's what ifs. That's my job, is to navigate those what ifs and to ensure that I don't spiral in a direction that doesn't allow me to lead. My number one objective as a head coach is to lead the group. And that's where I have let the past be the past. I'm very aware that we have finished 9th yet again, and that's not good enough for us. And so, yeah, it's just been identifying those pieces, letting the what ifs be the what ifs, and how can I get that 1% to 2%. Yeah.
Go ahead.
When you look back at last season, what do you think that you guys did right? Like, what is good foundation that you're building upon this season?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of different pieces from the buy-in from the group to the work ethic of the group to obviously, hitting throughout that summer cup time and playing with a little bit of tactics that we felt, okay, let's test these out in the summer cup because we have a majority of our roster at that point where other teams had players kind of in and out. So I think there's a lot of right. And again, I think right now the biggest pieces are not this was 100%. We have a very good base. We have a very good team. We have a very bought-in team. We have very good people. We have a good staff. We have a lot of good. It's now upping everything. Like I'm talking about this 1% to 2% coming in, being very clear on the cultural expectations, enhancing the culture, and really feeling like we can go that 1% to extra 2% from any capacity to be able to get the results that we want this season. So that's the biggest piece for us, is creating, let's call it what it is. We all like to do, everybody says, do what you love for a living. It's fun, it's fun, it's fun. Winning is fun. Having a winning culture is fun. So that's going to be the biggest piece, yeah.
Speaking to Sav specifically with the national team call-up, what do you think that does for her in terms of confidence and such? Because I think this is the first time she's been called up in a decent bit.
For sure. I think it's massive for her confidence. And obviously it comes at a great time for her. So very excited for her, but also a great time for us. For her to come in with this type of confidence is going to be really important. And yeah, I think Sav, has been here with this club for some time now, and I think she means a lot to this community. She means a lot to this club. She's a fantastic player, and she's a very good person. So when you talk about role models, players, young people in the community that you would like, obviously I would say it about the majority, the whole entirety of our group. Saf's just been here for a long time, and she's very well respected. So to have something like this from our club, and for her to be recognized for who she is, and what she's done on the pitch, is very exciting for us.
And you mentioned how the timing of the national team camp and
Yeah.
also the whole new footprint of this schedule as someone who has seen the league in
Of
various
course.
stages. What do you like about the new footprint of the schedule? What do you maybe not like about it? Like, what did you see with that announcement as a whole from the league?
Yes, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think Jessica Berman in general has just done a very, very good job in her role for this league. I think she has come in and she has exceeded expectations in multiple facets for the league and the league's progression. I think we're all aware women's sports, I've said this multiple times last year, it's at an all-time high. Women's football's at an all-time high. I think she's come into this league at a very important and crucial moment and has really progressed in ways that weren't highly unattainable. She's come in and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. So looking at the footprint, looking at kind of what the schedule will look like, obviously I think it's continuing to progress this league in multiple ways. And I think it's always like slightly different in some capacity, and others it's pretty similar and familiar to what we are used to. But yeah, I'm excited for the season to begin. I don't think there's anything that I look at the footprint, I'm like, oh. For us, it's just going to be working around that, and then obviously once the schedule is announced, working around those pieces to understand from game to game kind of what our flow will look like for the season.
A question from Zoom. What is the biggest lesson? This is from John Lupo. What is the biggest, biggest lesson you learned as a manager, and where do you think you can grow to help lead the franchise going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was open about probably the biggest lesson being how can I continue to build those relationships, implementing something like this personality traits opportunity to better understand the players and my staff. I think what we need to understand, and what's been very clear to me over the past few months, that of course was clear to me stepping into this role, is that this is a people industry. This is a people industry. So if you can connect with the person, if you can get the most out of the person, you get most out of the footballer as well. And so I think it's really important that we continue to, results aside, it's a result-driven industry. We're all fully aware of that, okay? But it's a people industry first and foremost, and understanding them and getting the most out of the players and the most out of the staff. Providing as much clarity as possible, communicating as much as possible to make sure that we're all driving in the same direction, and it just becomes a well-oiled machine. So that's exactly what I'm focused on for 2025.
Do those connections have more importance in a club like Racing that has seen turnover from coaches to GMs and kind of just had that instability and they're not able to have that real stability with a long-term kind of person at the forefront?
Yeah, and I think for me, it's for me personally being in this position that I'm in, first and foremost, when you talk about leadership, leadership is relationships. Leadership is the ability to create relationships. Leadership is the ability to make sure that there's clarity in what everybody should be doing. And that's always the biggest question. If you are very clear on what the role is, the execution will happen. Right? And so for me, I'm not focused on the turnover here, the turnover there. I'm focused on creating everything I possibly can for this environment and for everybody to just understand what their roles are.
A question from Zoom. Peyton Skeels asks, how has the elimination of the draft impacted your approach to the season and preparation, if at all? And also just an update on Ellie Pickey-Yamsa and her health.
Okay. So the draft going away, it's a lot more, in my opinion, it's a lot more watching, deep diving into players, because the reality is when you're creating these buckets, and Sergio is our master in the college space. He's done a fantastic job for several years for this club. He's our goalkeeper coach who also works very diligently with the college athletes and understanding the college system. And we would previously build buckets off of, okay, we have this pick. Okay, here's the players that we believe will go in the first round off of our findings. Here's what we need positionally. And here's what we think who would go in the second round. Here's what we need positionally. If this player goes, I mean, we were in the draft reading a line. Okay, she's gone. Who's the next player that we would be interested in? Okay, so those types of pieces. But you're bucketing it based off of the reality of where your picks are. And you're almost predicting, right? You don't get it right, of course, not all the time. But you can somewhat guess in some capacity. Now it's all this. So now it's looking at so many more players, so many more conversations. We spent a lot, and I know Caitlyn can attest to this, so we spent a lot of the off season doing Zoom calls and getting to know individuals, presenting obviously the city, what the city has to offer, what our club has to offer, what our facilities look like. There's a lot more conversation without a draft because there's just more players. You have access now to the first pick. You have access now to the second pick. You have access now to the third pick, quote unquote. So it's just identifying what our needs are and being very specific in the positional profile we're looking for our needs, but also being very specific in the type of character we're looking for. So when I'm looking at these clips, and we have to understand this is a deep, deep dive, I'm looking at, okay, what are they doing defensively? Okay, this is an offensive player. This is the positional profile I'm looking for. What does she do when she loses the ball? What does she do when the closest player to her loses the ball? What is her reaction? What is the team's style of play? What are her expectations within the style of play? What's coachable? She's very good at this, this, and this. I can teach her this. This is coachable for me. This is not coachable for me. So there's a lot more to it because the pool, in essence, is just so much bigger now. But that doesn't mean that it's good or bad, or it just means that there's a different process that we're working through and understanding what the best way to do that is. And then LEP, she's doing well. She's continuing to progress, continuing to rehab. I spoke to her maybe 2 days ago when I had player calls. She's in a good space. She's excited to come back and continue her progression.
Kind of jumping off that, the back line's obviously going to look different with Abby gone, Aaron coming back. When you look at that group from a very early standpoint, what do you see as the potential for that back line as you continue to build it?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, obviously, very grateful for Abby and Parker and everything that they've done for the club. Obviously, both were in free agency, and I do want to say thank you to both of them for everything that they've done for this club. I think for us, it's just continuing to enhance what we believe we can do as a group, and obviously there is specific attention that we're putting on positions and kind of what the idea will be moving forward in those positions. And we are working behind closed doors, both Caitlyn and I, and the data analyst on what those needs are and the execution of those needs.
What does Aaron bring back to you guys?
Yeah.
You're an experienced player, but clearly a local connection with Kentucky as well.
Yeah, absolutely. She local to Kentucky, knows the state, knows very much so is a big piece of the community from that aspect. Very experienced player, has been in the league for so many years. And I'm incredibly pleased with her adaptation to center back this year, and my expectations of that position with her filling it. I thought she did really well. So I'm excited for her to come back. I'm excited to continue to push that space and continue to enhance all the pieces of her game that I feel we can continue to enhance, but obviously very, very pleased with her contributions to this group, what she brings to this group. And she just works her butt off. She consistently works her butt off. I'm excited for her to return, not only obviously to our club, to this community, but also in this role. I think she's done a very good job as a center back for us, and I'm excited for her to return.
I have one more from Zoom, and then we'll leave room for one more in the room. Okay. This is from Jeff Kassouf. We were talking about the wider bucket with the draft. How have you found things from the other side of the table? In the draft, a team held a pick. And in the new process, there's a freedom of choice for players. They can kind of be sold by clubs on where they want to go, and you have to recruit them a little bit differently. How have you positioned the opportunity in Louisville for college players in particular?
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic question. It's a fantastic question. And I think you're consistently trying to be creative. You used the word like selling, was one of his words. You're trying to showcase the authenticity of your club. That's what you're trying to showcase, okay? You're also trying to showcase the market of your club. And authenticity being the position, what you're looking for in the position, but I spoke very clearly on character. So when I'm looking at the character of the player, I'm saying positionally, this is where I see you fit. This is why I see you fit. But most importantly, your character and the pieces of these aspects of your game, I feel embody the culture we're looking for. And so it's those types of communications. It's also explaining, what the biggest pieces of our city are. Like what is Louisville, Kentucky? Because I know I came to Louisville, Kentucky several years ago when my husband played soccer at U of L, and I came for the first time and was like, what's Louisville, Kentucky? And dropped in for the first time and was like, this is the most underrated city I've ever been to. This is phenomenal, from the people to the food to the warm, family vibes that you get in the city. And I'm like, okay, I would like to keep coming back. Obviously, when an opportunity presented itself, I came back because I was very grateful to come to the city. So it's explaining what the city is when maybe not a lot of people know what Louisville, Kentucky is. I'm sure people have flown in and out of LA. I'm sure people have flown in and out of San Diego, or maybe had a stop in New York. So it's explaining what the city is and why we are so special. This is a very special city. So what makes it special? That's our jobs, is to explain what makes it special. We're trying to touch the player to understand, is this somewhere you could see yourself? And this is who we are. This is what we're looking to do, what we would like to accomplish. This is where we see you. This is why we see you here. This is the characteristics that we like. And it's just the littlest things, right? You go as far as comparing costs, right? We're this much cheaper to live here, to be here, right? You're just finding unique things to be able to connect with them on. And ultimately, that's probably the process itself, yeah.
Any last questions?
Hopefully
from
that's
anyone in the
helpful.
room?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You're good.
Done that twice now. I know we kind of touched on that. I know we kind of touched on it, but what is your relationship with the interim GM, and just how are you kind of connecting with her as
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Caitlyn knows this club. She's been at this club for a very long time. So she knows the club and she knows the league. And so us getting together very early on and aligning as much as possible in what our processes will look like has been very important for us. Specifically, we've worked very heavily in the recruitment side. And we feel very confident in the process that we've put in place alongside of our data analysts. And it's just continuing to work together to make sure that we can create as much clarity as possible coming into the season. And just like I mentioned earlier, become a well-oiled machine, not only as a club from staff to players, but as a staff. And then obviously with the Caitlyn, the interim GM right now, and just make sure it trickles down and it just becomes very, very much so a well-oiled machine.
Good. All right. Thank you so much, Bev.
You can ask it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, of course.
I was just going to ask about Emma. That's it.
Yeah, of course,
I
of course,
mean,
of course.
She had
I've got
such
time for you guys, no worries.
a good rookie season, but making
Yeah.
that leap in year two, just what
Yeah.
parts of her game do you emphasize? You were great here. This is how you
Yeah.
maintain that, or even take another step forward this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Emma is a very mature player. She's very poised. She came in, and I've referenced this multiple times, I'll never forget. Day one, she came in, I'm like, wow, she's very tall, she's very strong. Obviously, I watched her on Y Scout multiple times. Sergio got to see her in person, but for me, I was like, wow, okay. We do the first fitness test, and she's running back and forth, and she's coming back. I'm like, is she that far? Yes, she's that far ahead. Wow. Extremely fit, right? Then I see her, and just the pieces, all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, she is special. She's special. Throughout preseason, I'm like, ooh, she's very special. And it just continued to see attributes of her game where obviously we all know she's very freaking fast. She's very fast. But she's not just very fast. She's very technical. She's very tactically sound. Now, in all those pieces, does she have areas of her game that she needs to continue to improve? Absolutely, but that's our jobs, to support those areas, to push those areas as much and as consistently as possible. But you need a player that's open-minded to it, right? It's very difficult, let me be very clear, it's very difficult to have a player come into your environment and to think they know everything. There's only so far you can take that individual. And if you're not developing the individuals, the collective never grows, okay? So she's very open-minded to how can she continue to be better. Obviously, I started her on the left as the 11 a few times, right? And then she was in and out. She was coming in. She was starting, right? I was pushing for a consistency piece from her. And she has just showcased the maturity, the professionalism to want to invest in her game. And if that's her approach, the stars are the limit for her. She's going to continue to excel. She's going to continue to do great things. And she is a fantastic person. She's a fantastic person. So very grateful that she's here. I will never forget that 28th pick for the rest of my life. I'm very happy that she's here. She deserves all the accolades that she's receiving. Yeah, very excited for her and excited to follow along and be a part of her journey here.
Cool. All right.
Ben?
Thank you, Bev.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Of course.
Not normal for a lot of leaders,
No.
so it's like, there's a lot of people in that boat.
Mhm.
I'm rocked by it. My husband's building a snowstorm in the front yard. Oh, California people.
Guys good? Caitlyn, if you want to just introduce yourself and say hello to everybody, and then we'll
Sure.
open questions.
Yeah, Caitlyn Milby. As you may have seen, I've been the director of ops here for the last 3 years. Before that was just down the hall in the academy. And then years and years ago, I was an intern here for a little bit. So if you own any merchandise from 2017, I probably sold you that t-shirt. So I've been around. So yeah, just really, really excited to be here working with Bev. And that's that. I can dive deeper, went to U of L. That's why I came here. Played soccer there for Karen, ended up being the team manager, kind of found my love for soccer off of the field. Left, came back again. So clearly I can't stay away from Louisville. So now my husband and I live here. We have our family, our growing family. So just absolutely love the city and the club.
Questions for Caitlyn?
What was it like to step into this role, being from around it for so long, like you've explained?
Yeah, so I was fortunate. Ryan and I shared that office just down the hall for the last year. So I was able to work really closely with him. The league has a lot of nuances that it's very difficult to come into someone outside of the league. So him and I worked really closely, learned a lot, got to see a lot. So it's just been, with anything, it's a learning curve for sure. But just being around the league, you really start to pick up stuff quickly. And then the little things that I would do in my director of ops role, just between visa, immigration, getting them here, understanding their contracts, because I deal so heavily with that. It hasn't been a massive shift. I'm not going to lie and say it hasn't been a shift, but it hasn't been anything crazy.
What would you say is the biggest challenge so far?
Obviously going from kind of director of ops for both like the players and the staff and just making my kind of putting my foot down, not foot down, but just kind of like getting my space into it. And so it's like working with Bev, and it's a different role, obviously. So just doing that, all of our staff has been here for quite some time. So lucky in that sense that like they've seen me, we work together. So that's been easy. And then just getting the players, obviously going from a director of ops to kind of this role, you have a different responsibility for them. So just working through those little pieces.
I feel like you guys are more nervous now.
Keep the theme.
No, we're just kidding. Going back to Jeff's question earlier and talking about the elimination of the draft, and kind of how this is all changing, like from your seat, how does it most affect you on your end in your role in trying to evaluate this and figure it out as it gets pieced together?
Yeah, like Bev mentioned, obviously it's pretty much free agency. Sorry. Pretty much free agency. So that's been interesting. Obviously, when we had the draft, you get these players here and you can really entice them once they get here. Whereas before, it's been a lot of, like Bev said, selling the city, which I would think I do a pretty decent job being here for so long and can really speak to a lot of different things. So that's been interesting. And then just obviously figuring out the market that is. So, talking to agents, talking to other GMs, talking to people in the league, it's like, this is the wild, wild west. No one knows what's happening. No one knows how to do it. No one knows if they're doing it right. We won't know if we're doing it right for a little bit of time. These players have never kicked the ball in the league. So it's just been trying to figure out, what players' values are. So when they came in, you could kind of see, okay, first round pick, you're probably thinking this versus like a fourth round. And so now it's just figuring out between us, trying to make those guesses ahead of time before they even step foot into the city, before we even see them on the field. So it's just been interesting, and it's one of those fun things where you come in and you're like, no one knows what we're doing with this. So it's just been an interesting ride, but I think we're all in the same boat. But I think we're excited with what we've been able to do, and as we continue, so I think it'll be good.
Sitting in the interim seat right now, do you have the desire to want to do this permanently full time?
Yeah, if not, I would have been the heck out of there a couple months ago, because it's been a lot, obviously, but it's been great. So I think it's nice to get my feet wet into it and really get to see what exactly it is. So if the time comes and that does happen, I know exactly what I'm stepping into, and be able to kind of prove myself, might be not the right word, but be able to prove myself that this is what's happening. We've gone through the off season, we've worked well, once we get the players and staff back in. So for sure.
You mentioned that you and Ron, you guys shared the office together.
Mhm.
Is there one thing that you could pinpoint, like, that he taught you, like, or something around that sphere that, like, oh my gosh, like, this is going to come in really handy?
Yeah, and I would say this to Ryan to his face. I got to learn a lot of good things, and I got to see from his mistakes. So that was, I think, one of the most beneficial things is I'm going to make mistakes, but I won't hopefully make them twice. And so being able to see what worked really well, what didn't work, that was great. And just to be able to learn from him. We still have a great relationship, chatted with him yesterday. So being able to have that kind of mentor in a way to kind of chat, go over some things. Obviously, he's been here, things like that. And even stuff from like operational and logistically, got to learn a lot from him from his time with U.S. Soccer, because still handling that as we kind of transition through. I'm still handling flights. I'm still handling all those types of things. So it was, I don't know if there's anything pinpoint, but it was great just to be able to sit next to him. I mean, we would bounce ideas off of each other, watch how relationships get built, because what you find really quickly, agents will talk to just about anyone. So if you're in charge, it's picking up the phone, it's chatting with them. Great people, just building those relationships go so far. I'd like to think I could talk to a brick wall. So I think I can talk to just about anyone. So that's been good. And then just, again, getting in when the players get here, excited to have them all back. Because it's always, when everyone's away, they're not here, it's easy, we're distant, and then we're going to get everyone back in, and excited for that. So.
Question from Zoom. With the team so close to making the playoffs last year and then re-signing players who are already with the team, what areas do you need to focus on most, and what's most important in terms of bringing in players who fit Bev's style? Are you looking for track record of winning, something else?
Yeah, as Bev mentioned, I think as I've kind of stepped in, it's working really closely with her to find exactly what she needs and be able to get what those pieces that she needs. Obviously, you talked about the back line. We were able to re-sign Aaron. Excited about that. I think we're really lucky. We have continuity both between the team and the staff. While obviously Ryan's departure, everyone else is the same and has been for going on 4 seasons now. And then our players, we're bringing back quite a few of our starting lineup and our entire team in general. And so it's just been finding those pieces to fit in where we need to, and just working together. I mean, like I said, Bev and I have been working day and night for months now. I don't even know what day it is, but we've been working our butts off to be able to make sure that we're getting the right pieces. Obviously, you want to get everything immediately, but we know that we have a process in place now to make sure that we aren't rushing into anything. We feel really good about every decision that we make because we're following that process, and that we're going to find the right person when the right time comes.
Bev mentioned she was doing some self-reflecting over the off season. With you in this new role, are you self-reflecting on what happened last year, or are you just kind of focusing on the forward?
Sure. So obviously prior to this, with my director of ops role and kind of the way that I operated then, if the players were on the field and on time, I was doing my job well. And so now that's much different, obviously. Self-reflection for sure. I don't know if I've had a ton of time to be able to do that over the last 2 months. So it's just been, which on one hand is good because I can't sit here and worry and stress and do it. We're just jumping right in, which is the way I like to operate, get just right into the fire. So I think over time it's day to day, it's going home and sitting like, okay, how did this go? It's almost on a daily basis of like, what could I do better? What does tomorrow look like? Things like that, and go forward, because obviously it's a massive shift from what I was doing to what I am doing. But again, it's day by day, and like I said, learning from hopefully not too many mistakes, but just moving forward.
Anything else for Caitlyn? Oh, we got a question from Zoom here. How has Racing's W League team played a role in free agency and the player search process?
Yeah. Let's think. We have the ability to have been able to see quite a few players throughout the W League, and obviously when the draft was here, it didn't benefit us in the same way it does now. Obviously, we had the likes of Emily Madrill, Jenna Neiswanger, Ellie Setnar for times, and with the draft, it didn't matter because, like Bev said, unless we had that pick, it wasn't beneficial to us. And it was unfortunate because they would come into our environment, they would be in our facilities, they'd be around our coaching staff and players and really want and enjoy their time, but ultimately it didn't matter. So now we have that kind of added benefit to bring in those players to be able to see what we have going on here in Louisville. And so I think we've been able to look back, talk to our W League staff, the coaching staff, to see, hey, what about this player? What about this player? Things like that. And I think we can just build on that moving forward and to make it even more beneficial to us.
Just what was it like to get those first couple of deals done, especially this offseason?
Yeah, no, it was great. I think at one time it was like, oh, congrats. And it's like, yep, just almost got to keep on moving. So it's like, wow, you can't dwell or even like celebrate that because there's another phone call down the line. There's something else that needs your attention. So it's great, similar to this, getting kind of something like this done and out of the way. So now we can move forward and it's just kind of be an easy flow and easy transition.
Anything else? All right. Thank you so much, Caitlyn.
Perfect, yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, this baby gives me so much heartburn.
Those are not going to do this.
No. What's it?